I like to go, I found a lot of this out from the old land grants and real estate transfers. So I never know exactly who the man or woman was. I just know I give you the family name, because sometimes they name it after a daughter, son, like that. And the same with Zulette, the next one we're coming to. And when you come to Zulette, that's the limit. And then we're going to be into Middletown Road, Middletown section. But these are just names that I picked out, and they're all about the 1850s. So we're going to get down. Once we get down to Middletown, at the next about 5 minutes from now, that was the American encampment, and I'll tell you more about it there. Okay? Yeah. Oh, I forgot about Sam Young Post.
That's all right.
Yeah.
That's not really historic.
Hey.
John, the gray house we got this zinc bathtub in?
Yeah.
The gray house?
Now we're standing right in front of a historic old house belonging to the Ferris family, one of the Ferris families. And this is pegged just about 1855, 1860. Our oldest society member, May Dougherty, she was a Ferris girl, and she's our oldest and one of the founders of Bronx Historical Society. Still alive. She's living down in a home in Jersey, but she frequently writes or even phone calls. She's a very good mind. She's must be pretty close to the century mark now. And what I wanted to tell you about this, she married this man named Dougherty, or Doherty, and he was an Irish immigrant from the north, and he had a carriage business right in the square, and he had a stable right around the corner. We just passed Zulette. He had it there. And so as a gift, the older folks were going to move out, and they turned it over to the young bride and groom. And one of the marvels of the age at the time was a real bathtub about 7 feet long. It was up there in the attic, up near the attic, and it was serviced by the servants. They had to lug up all the water up and dump the water in. There was no such thing as water pressure or plumbing up there. So that was quite a and I've been in there many a time, and but she always said, "Oh, the place is a mess up there," and all this kind of thing. So I gave up wanting to see it. But I understand, I just hear that some antique dealer finally got wind of this. It had the old claw corners and everything like that, and it was quite high with wainscoting on it too. So she would describe it, but she wouldn't show it. Yeah. So as long as we're right here, the next block that you can look over to, that's the encampment section of Washington's. He had a exploratory survey of this particular area because he knew that the British were going to come up this way on the fleet from Manhattan. So he was over in Kingsbridge section, and came over with with his crew, his staff, and they had a very good staff. They even told what he had for lunch and what he drank, and he drank this Frog's Neck cider. There was a cider press right about here, and they were very annoyed that the townspeople were gaping in at this farmhouse and looking in the windows. Well, he came along here, and the general. Oh, and he came along this old colonial road, but he was coming this way, and he met this. He met this General Lee, who was in charge of the forces on this side, and they compared notes and everything. And then Washington accompanied him out along the possible landings, if there was going to be a landing. And they ended up on Pennyfield Avenue, which I think you might be familiar with because it leads to Fort Schuyler. And right where the causeway is, there was actually some British patrol boats, And they said when they saw them uniforms, they realized that it might be some of the rebels, and they lobbed a couple of cannon shots at them. And whereupon the Lee, Washington, and they come galloping back along Pennyfield Avenue, and they were shielded from the warships by Silver Beach, which is quite an escarpment there. So they came back, and then of course Washington went back and he joined the main army there. Now I remember as a small boy, there were old timers telling me that was where they met. And it got to be like a family, neighborhood folklore. But then to my astonishment, one day I was walking down, and you'll see it, we're going past a little cul-de-sac called Lee Street. And that's what it's named, that's who it's named for. It's right behind that motel there, as we'll be going by. So in the meanwhile, when the Americans were on this side, and of course the British were, they advanced. They were coming this way. All the Americans just left by the same North Road up here, Pelham Road. So this is as far as the British ever got, but they were coming from this very same place. And I always say something symbolic about this. That's where right at that point where Washington was observing the enemy with his spyglass and everything, and it's been written up. That's where I first met a man who got me interested in Bronx history. He was a lighthouse keeper out at the fort, and my brother and I were carrying our canoe overland from one side from the East River over to Hammond Cove, and he stopped in his horse and carriage and watched us. And then he finally says, "You boys are doing just what the Indians were doing." And then he had me hooked. And we used to go out to his house occasionally, and he had Indian arrowheads. He had antlers from these fire pits where they cooked. They got rid of their refuse, and there was antlers from deer. There were whale bones in there and everything. Of course, there was also whaling being done up here. So, and of course, one of the big attractions, his wife was a wonderful cook, and we always had cookies and milk when we went out there. So that was the start of my interest, because living out there, I could ask the old tenant farmers or the fishermen and the oystermen and everything. They all had stories. Of course, some of them I realize now were folklore, and I was a sitting duck for them. You know? Yeah.
Did you say Frog's Neck cider?
Frog's Neck cider was made right here in this. There was a cider mill here. Apples, the apple orchards, and so it's listed in the Washington Journal of the day that he imbibed in Frog's Neck cider. Yeah. So this is it, and that's the story of the big bathtub too. Oh. This is the Koch farm was right up here behind me, going up the hill. That's Middletown Road, and the Koch family and they're intermarried co-founders of the society named Schlesman. So and then there's the next one. They had these laborers that would come in. Itinerant laborers and different nationalities, as you can see. It says these are seasonal crews, mostly German and Italian and Irish immigrants. These men are not identified, but they do say they were hired along Middletown Road in different farms. And that's the Baxter family. That was on Middletown Road, facing what is now that Indian warehouse section there. And this is, what year is that? 1870, the Baxter family. Now we have one of the Baxters.
Yes, it was. Yeah. Went to put something in his car.
Where is he?
When he comes back with something.
Oh, gee. You'd hate to miss that.
Oh, yeah.
No, I'll have it out. If you want to pass it around and look at it, you can. And then meanwhile, we're going to cross under the L and on the other side. This is Lee Street, and though it's a historic spot, it's entirely unmarked, and I would say that 90% of the people have no idea of its significance. And I mentioned it to a few people who